They called it Operation Highjump. In August of 1946, just 1 year after the end of World War II, the United States Navy launched one of the largest and most ambitious expeditions in military history. Officially named the United States Navy Antarctic Developments Program, Operation Highjump was led by Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, a celebrated polar explorer with ties to earlier expeditions in Antarctica. The stated mission: to train personnel and test equipment in frigid conditions, to consolidate and extend U.S. sovereignty over the largest unexplored continent on Earth, and to establish the feasibility of building military bases in the polar south. At least that's what the paperwork said. But beneath the official language and logistical jargon, Operation Highjump raises more questions than it answers. Because this wasn't a typical scientific expedition. It was a massive military operation. It involved 1,700 troops, 13 ships, including the aircraft carrier USS Philippine Sea, 23 aircraft, including flying boats, snow-capable bombers, and reconnaissance planes, and a budget so large it was never publicly disclosed. It was, by all standards, a full-scale military invasion of the coldest, most inhospitable place on Earth. And yet, it was launched just months after the bloodiest conflict in human history had ended. Why? Why was the U.S. mobilizing wartime resources for a place with no population, no enemy army, and no geopolitical threat? The expedition was planned to last 6 to 8 months. But by February 1947, just a few weeks in, Operation Highjump was abruptly terminated. The official explanation? Bad weather, equipment failures, poor preparation. But those who were there, those who witnessed what actually happened, told a different story. In the months that followed, Admiral Byrd himself gave a strange interview to a Chilean newspaper, warning that America must prepare for the possibility of flying objects that could travel from pole to pole at incredible speed. His words would spark decades of speculation, because something happened in Antarctica that winter. Something big enough, strange enough, to make the U.S. Navy pack up its ships, turn around, and go home. The question is, what? When Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd returned from Antarctica, he didn't head straight to Washington. Instead, he appeared in Chile, where he granted an interview to El Mercurio, a prominent South American newspaper. The date was March 5, 1947, and what he said would ripple through conspiracy circles for generations. Byrd warned cryptically that America must prepare to defend itself against aircraft that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. He said these were no ordinary threats, and that the next war could come from Antarctica itself. It was an odd statement, startling even, for a decorated naval officer. At the time, there were no known aircraft that could perform such feats. No military on Earth possessed technology that could go from one end of the planet to the other in a matter of hours. And yet Byrd spoke as if these machines already existed, and that the U.S. had seen them. When asked for clarification, Byrd was vague. He refused to go into detail about what happened on the icy continent, what his men saw, or why Operation Highjump had ended early. He only repeated that America faced a new type of danger, and that Antarctica was not as empty as it seemed. The U.S. government quickly distanced itself from the interview. Byrd was recalled to Washington, and his public appearances grew rare. El Mercurio's article was never reprinted in U.S. media. The Navy released no official statement addressing Byrd's comments, and the official record of Operation Highjump was quietly filed away, with large sections marked as classified. But what exactly did Byrd encounter down there? Some researchers believe Byrd's comments hinted at unknown aerial phenomena, what today we might call UFOs or UAPs. Others suggest he saw the remnants of a secret Nazi base built during the final days of World War II, complete with experimental aircraft, advanced energy sources, and technology that defied physics. Still others believe Byrd had a psychological breakdown, the result of stress and harsh conditions, and that his interview was misinterpreted or taken out of context. But that doesn't explain why the mission ended early. It doesn't explain why so much of Operation Highjump remains classified, and it certainly doesn't explain what happened to the missing flight crew of Flight 19, who reportedly disappeared over the southern continent and were never found again. The deeper you look, the more Operation Highjump begins to resemble something other than a training exercise. It begins to look like a search for something or someone hidden beneath the ice. Let's rewind the clock to the final years of World War II. As Allied forces advanced across Europe, strange reports emerged from the Nazi ranks of scientists, engineers, and high-ranking officials being evacuated, not to Berlin, but to the far south. Whispers circulated of a last redoubt, a hidden refuge at the edge of the world. That edge, according to declassified intelligence memos, was New Schwabenland, a vast portion of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica, claimed by Nazi Germany in 1939. Yes, the Nazis had already laid claim to Antarctica years before Operation Highjump, and they didn't go alone. Historical records show that Germany's 1938-39 Antarctic expedition brought submarines, equipment for tunneling into the ice, and mysterious large cargo shipments whose contents remain unknown to this day. They mapped the terrain from the air, dropped aluminum darts marked with swastikas to establish territory, and named the land New Swabia, New Schwabenland. But why would Nazi Germany risk such a bold and bizarre claim, especially on the eve of global war? Theories vary, but many converge on one chilling idea, that the Nazis weren't just exploring Antarctica. They were building something there. According to post-war intelligence documents, including those from the Soviets and British, the Third Reich may have constructed a secret underground base, Base 211, beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. And when the Reich fell in 1945, some believe elements of the SS and Nazi elite escaped, fleeing to this hidden base with stolen technology, gold, and possibly even scientific breakthroughs far ahead of their time. German U-boats that vanished without a trace in 1945 were reportedly seen months later near South America and Antarctica, fueling suspicions of an organized evacuation. And then came Operation Highjump just 2 years later. Too soon, too sudden, and far too large for a simple training mission. Why would the United States send over 4,000 men, 13 ships, aircraft, tanks, and weapons to Antarctica? Unless they were preparing for something more serious. Unless they were hunting ghosts of the Third Reich. Some researchers even claim that a skirmish took place between American forces and an unknown enemy during the mission. Aircraft were said to have been shot down by flying discs that emerged from beneath the ice, silent, fast, and otherworldly in their maneuvering. These are the stories that official history refuses to acknowledge. But in declassified documents, obscure naval logs, and the whispered testimonies of those who were there, a darker truth begins to take shape. Maybe Admiral Byrd wasn't warning us about the future. Maybe he was warning us about a past that never ended. The year is 1947. Operation Highjump is underway. Admiral Byrd's fleet is carving through the frigid Southern Ocean, ships wrapped in ice, aircraft roaring over the endless white. But then, something strange begins to happen. According to multiple eyewitnesses, sailors, pilots, engineers, the skies weren't empty. They spoke of fast-moving objects, metallic, silent, unlike anything they'd ever seen. And then came the rumors that several of Byrd's aircraft were shot down, not by enemy fire in the traditional sense, but by flying discs that emerged from beneath the ice. That's right, disc-shaped craft, described by crewmen as silver-colored, hovering silently, and moving at impossible speeds. In one account, attributed to a Chilean newspaper, El Mercurio, Admiral Byrd is quoted as saying, "The United States must prepare for the possibility of enemy aircraft flying from pole to pole with incredible speed." Whether this quote is apocryphal or deliberately buried in layers of disinformation, it lines up chillingly with whispers from within the mission itself. One source claimed the objects could travel from pole to pole in mere hours, defying everything we knew about propulsion, gravity, and physics. But here's where it gets darker. One of the U.S. Navy aircraft, a Martin PBM Mariner, vanished without a trace during the mission. Its crew lost, never recovered. The official story. A crash. But unofficially, some survivors told of being ordered never to speak of what they saw, of being debriefed under the harsh lights of military bunkers when they returned home. A handful of pilots, long since passed, allegedly confessed to their families that their aircraft were shadowed by UFOs over the ice. Craft that moved vertically, emitted no sound, and outpaced the fastest fighters in the U.S. arsenal. Could it have been alien? Perhaps. But others suggest something different. Something more terrifying in its plausibility. That these craft were man-made. That the Nazis had reverse-engineered unknown technology, brought it to Antarctica, and were now operating in secret, watching as the U.S. dared to enter their frozen domain. And then, without warning, Operation Highjump ended abruptly. What was supposed to last 6 to 8 months was terminated after just 8 weeks. No formal explanation was given. No post-mission press tour, only silence. And Admiral Byrd? He returned to Washington, debriefed Congress in a closed-door session, and never publicly spoke about what truly happened in Antarctica again. Was it embarrassment or fear? Whatever happened beneath the ice, whatever soared above the clouds that year, remains buried in classified files and frozen soil. But the legend of flying discs, vanishing aircraft, and a war that didn't end in 1945 continues to haunt Antarctica to this day. When Admiral Byrd returned from Antarctica, he was not the same man. According to reports from those close to him, he became withdrawn, avoiding the press, dodging questions about Operation Highjump. This wasn't the triumphant return of a celebrated explorer. It was the return of a man who had seen something and had been told to forget it. What followed was a wall of silence. Most of Operation Highjump's detailed mission records were classified, including aircraft telemetry, weather logs, and radio recordings. And when the public pressed for answers, they were fed a sanitized version of events. A scientific mission cut short due to weather conditions and logistical challenges. But behind closed doors, a different story emerged. In 1948, less than a year after the expedition, Byrd was summoned to testify in secret before high-level U.S. military officials and intelligence agencies. Those files? Still buried deep in the archives of naval intelligence. So what exactly was being suppressed? Some believe it wasn't just about UFOs or flying discs. It was about technology, power. Sources from within post-war intelligence circles hinted at the recovery of objects, or even a hidden Nazi base beneath the Antarctic ice. One conspiracy, chilling in its consistency, speaks of a Base 211, a secret installation allegedly built by the Nazis during World War II, protected by natural caverns warmed by geothermal energy. According to fringe documents and declassified snippets, this base may have served as a site for advanced experimentation, possibly even involving anti-gravity propulsion systems. This theory gained more traction decades later, when declassified CIA documents referenced anomalous activity detected in Antarctica. Some of these documents, now available through FOIA requests, contain redacted sections with only one phrase visible: believed to be of non-terrestrial origin. Was that an intentional leak? Or a clerical oversight? We may never know. But what's undeniable is this: key data, mission logs, and survivor testimonies were erased or hidden from the public. And Byrd? He faded into quiet retirement, giving occasional interviews that skirted the truth. In one of his final recorded statements, he cryptically said, "Antarctica holds secrets man is not yet ready to confront." He died in 1957. His journals remained sealed for decades. But just when the world began to forget, strange things began happening again. In 1959, just 2 years after Byrd's death, the Antarctic Treaty was signed, banning all military activity and territorial claims on the continent. Signed by 12 nations, including former enemies like the US and Soviet Union, the treaty remains one of the most unusual diplomatic agreements in modern history. Why such urgency? Why such cooperation over frozen, empty land? Unless Antarctica was not empty. Unless it never was. Today, Antarctica is shrouded in mystery, not just by ice, but by policy and silence. For a continent supposedly devoted to peace and science, Antarctica is one of the most heavily restricted zones on Earth. Try to visit it on your own terms, and you'll run into walls. Physical, legal, and digital. Let's start with the obvious: the Antarctic Treaty System. Signed in 1959 and still in effect, this agreement prohibits any military activity, weapons testing, or territorial claims. It forbids mineral exploration. It bans nuclear explosions and waste. And yet it allows certain countries to maintain permanent research stations, many of which are government-run, with limited transparency. Ask yourself, why was it necessary to lock down the entire continent? Why was a remote frozen wasteland suddenly the focus of global cooperation, at the height of the Cold War, no less? And why, despite advances in satellite imaging, is Google Earth still blurring out entire regions of Antarctica? Try it. Zoom in on the Queen Maud Land region or the Ellsworth Mountains. You'll find pixels, distortion, or in some cases, missing data entirely. Some areas are digitally scrubbed, others blacked out. Coincidence or curation? It's not just tech platforms either. No-fly zones have been reported over certain sectors, enforced by international agreements that are vague at best and secretive at worst. Civilian aircraft are strictly monitored. Unauthorized landings? Prohibited. Even experienced explorers, scientists with decades of credentials, have reported being turned away by military personnel without explanation. Then there's the curious case of Google deleting millions of satellite map tiles from its Antarctic layer in 2019. The company claimed it was a data update, but users who analyzed the deleted images noted strange structures and heat anomalies just before the wipe. Coincidence? Again, there are whispers in online forums. Leaked photos, videos that appear and disappear overnight. Claims of large triangular openings carved into the iced underground entrances near mountain ridges. Unidentified aerial activity spotted by civilian satellite hobbyists. These reports are usually dismissed as hoaxes, but they keep coming, and they keep being censored. Even respected whistleblowers, military contractors, satellite technicians, retired pilots have stepped forward, only to be discredited, their careers ruined. What are they protecting? Is it remnants of Nazi technology? Evidence of extraterrestrial contact? Or something even more ancient? A civilization buried under the ice? We don't know. But we do know this: you are not allowed to look. Antarctica is the only continent with no native population, no independent press, and no surveillance that isn't controlled by government or military actors. It is, in every sense of the word, a black site on a planetary scale. And yet no one questions it. No one asks why, but maybe they should. Because whatever Byrd saw, whatever Operation Highjump encountered, whatever secrets lie beneath that eternal ice, they were powerful enough to make the world's most powerful nations agree to stay silent. So now we stand at the edge of the world, literally and metaphorically. What lies beneath Antarctica's ice cap, that ancient frozen tomb stretching over 5.4 million square miles, remains one of the last great unanswered questions of modern history. But theories exist. Some are whispered in dark corners of the internet. Others come from former intelligence officers, declassified documents, and rare confessions. Let's walk through the most persistent theories, not to tell you what to believe, but to reveal just how many puzzle pieces have been hidden, and how deep this rabbit hole truly goes. 1. The ancient civilization theory. This is perhaps the most compelling and the most chilling. According to this theory, Antarctica wasn't always frozen. Ancient maps like the Peary Race map, drawn in 1513, show a detailed depiction of the continent without its ice sheet. That's thousands of years before it was even discovered by modern explorers. How could a 16th century map include information no European could have known, unless it was copied from a much older source? Some researchers suggest that Antarctica was once home to an advanced civilization, possibly the legendary Atlantis, or even a culture predating it. A people with architecture, technology, and knowledge far beyond their time. They believe that this civilization was buried beneath the ice during a sudden polar shift or cataclysm, a global event that wiped out history and erased memory, and that governments have known about it for decades. 2. The Nazi fortress theory. We return now to the persistent whispers of Base 211, a supposed Nazi stronghold built beneath the ice in Queen Maud Land. The theory holds that the Nazis, during and after World War II, used advanced submarine technology and secret engineering to construct a massive underground facility, possibly with help from unknown entities. According to some fringe historians and military defectors, Operation Highjump wasn't a research mission. It was a covert assault to destroy this Nazi base. But instead of conquering it, Admiral Byrd's forces were met with superior weaponry, perhaps flying craft, perhaps electromagnetic tech, and forced to retreat. The result? A global decision to cover it up. Whether the base still exists or was ever real at all remains unproven. But as we've shown, official history has gaps, and gaps are where truth sometimes hides. 3. The extraterrestrial hypothesis. Now we enter the most controversial theory of all. What if the structures beneath the ice, the electromagnetic anomalies, the strange craft witnessed by Byrd's pilots, aren't human at all? In 2012, a leaked WikiLeaks cable allegedly referenced extraterrestrial activity in Antarctica. The document is contested, but it added fuel to long-standing rumors of UFO bases beneath the South Pole. Some researchers claim that deep penetrating radar scans have revealed massive symmetrical structures, too precise to be natural formations, 2 miles beneath the ice. Others believe the so-called Antarctic pyramids photographed by satellite are remnants of non-human engineering. And there's this: why are NASA, the CIA, and the Vatican all frequent visitors to Antarctica? Why have popes, astronauts, and tech billionaires toured the continent under military escort? What are they being shown? What are they protecting? So what's the truth? The answer is we don't know. But what we do know is that the official story of Operation Highjump doesn't add up. You don't send 4,700 troops, 13 ships, 33 aircraft, and an admiral with combat experience for scientific research. You don't classify reports, censor media coverage, and end a mission months early, unless something went terribly wrong. You don't seal off an entire continent, erase satellite data, and enforce no-fly zones, unless there's something worth hiding. Maybe it's an ancient civilization. Maybe it's Nazi technology. Maybe it's something not of this world. Or maybe it's all of the above. Whatever the truth is, it's buried in ice, silence, and fear. But the story doesn't end here. It's only just beginning, because the coldest place on Earth may be the hottest front in the battle for truth. And someday, when the ice melts, or is peeled away by human curiosity, we might finally see what's been hidden all along. Until then, we're left with the echoes of a forgotten mission, the warnings of a decorated admiral, and a question that won't die. What did they find in Antarctica? And why are we not allowed to know? This is Facts on Trial. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more cinematic deep dives into the hidden truths of history.